The European Union and China trying to talk their way out of a trade war, with a meeting in Brussels ahead of a leaders' summit later this year. The European Commission is pressing Beijing over a trade deficit that's hit a record €1 billion a day, linked, it says, to industrial overcapacity. The EU also wanting to secure rare earth elements, importing more than 90% directly from China, as well as broader market access. Turning to a wider range of trade defense tools to push for these agreements with China. And that has sparked anger in Beijing, which says differences should be resolved through dialogue and not through what it calls protectionist trade measures, arguing competitiveness in manufacturing only benefits global supply chains. Disputes on a range of issues, from subsidies to EV batteries and medical devices, businesses hoping for progress, although most concede that significant differences stand in the way of any easy and quick resolution. William Denselow for CNN joins us live from Brussels. Just the acknowledgement, even heading into talks of very large differences, and yet for Brussels, there's a great deal at stake in these talks.
In the last few hours, we've heard from representatives from the European Commission spokesperson really summing up the nature of these talks today between China's Commerce Minister and the Trade Commissioner for the European Union. The spokesperson says that the European Commission is always seeking as a priority to engage in dialogue, but that dialogue, they say, must be positive. Now, when it comes to what this framework for discussions going forward to try and resolve what the EU see as these unsustainable trade imbalances, well, they are seeking potential mechanisms such as a trade investment consultation mechanism. But what we're seeing is more effort from the European Union to ensure that if such dialogue doesn't achieve the requisite results, then there is action to go along to back up these efforts for dialogue, and that is really seen as multifaceted. The EU's member states have given the European Commission essentially the go-ahead to come up with tools to fight back to try and address these imbalances. This could take the form of quotas, more tariffs in the future, even other mechanisms such as public procurement, trying to emphasize European businesses rather than entities such as China, as well as trying to wean Europe off some sensitive areas such as telecoms and high tech. So there are many different areas the EU is looking at to help potentially balance the scales. A real question, though, for member states is whether they have the appetite to go through on some of these potential threats should dialogue, such as the meeting here in Brussels, not go some way towards achieving these imbalances that the EU is so concerned about.
Questions about whether the EU actually has stomach for defense trade tools like these. Is there a sense of how it's managing overall, both through dialogue and through these mechanisms, its larger and long-term trade relationship with China?
EU member states have conceded, and they did so at a recent summit among leaders here in Brussels, that the EU must do its own homework too. It must become more competitive. It must do more to help its own businesses, its own sectors compete on the global scale, on the global front, not just with China, but for the United States and other markets as well. But that being said, as part of this, member states are urging the EU to do more when it comes to help defend interests through things like the Industrial Accelerator Act, to try and give businesses more tools to help protect mechanisms such as Made in Europe, for example. But member states are certainly concerned about any potential repercussions. You mentioned Beijing's response, accusing the EU of pursuing potential protectionist policies. Now, member states are concerned about what this could mean for their own businesses, so reliant, many of them, on the Chinese market. Germany, for example, and their auto sector are absolutely crucial for Chinese business. So there are some trepidation among member states as to how hard to push in this kind of rhetoric and action with Beijing. So these are all certainly conversations being had, not just when it comes bilaterally between the EU and China, but within the EU's 27 member states as well.
Thanks. William Denselow for CNN in Brussels, as the EU and China, the trade chief of the EU and the commerce minister for China meet in Brussels. Thanks for that.